Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Razil Fauzan, and then today I would like to presenting to you and share to you about the material is late Victorian era, which is this is for my subject in a class of history of English literature, and then so let's start it. Well, about the definition of late Victorian era, Victorian era in England, it started in 1817 until 1900 was the era in which two distinct but related development achieved full culmination. The first was uh, the ascendancy of the middle classes to economic, social, and political power as a result of the industrialization of England. The second is even was the full flowering of four new types of literature. So the middle classes of the late 19, which is in the late Victorian era, had for the first time the money, the leisure, and the education necessary to pursue various kinds of leisure time activities, including reading for pleasure. Not only did this new cultural consumer create the demand for more reading materials, they also provided a market for new types of literature. Well, about the characteristic about the era of late Victorian era, this is era could be subtitle of the Gladstone and Disraeli show for the two politicians who dominated on that era. The two men, Gladstone and Disraeli, could, couldn't have been more dissimilar. Gladstone was liberal, humanitarian, and devout. Queen Victorian found him stuffy. And then when we talking about the characteristic in this era, we also talking about the Victorian Empire. Much of the attention of the country was focused about during this era. In 1876, Victoria Queen Victoria was declared Empress of India, and the English Empire was constantly being expanded. The prevailing attitude in Britain was that expansion of British control around the globe was good for everyone. What about characteristic the literature in that era or in late Victorian era? Late Victorian literature in this age before TVs, computer, Nintendo, or what is it in this in our era is famous, but in that era, the most common form of entertainment was reading aloud. Parent of uh, the video age take note. Writers like Dickens, Tennyson, and Thurlow were widely read and discussed. The advent of universal compulsory education after 1817 mean that there was no much larger audience for literature. Disraeli himself, when he was looking on with the Gladstone, was a very popular novelist. Well, now about the example of the literature. Uh, in this era, a lot of work had been created, but I pick one of the masterpiece from Adam Bede. From the George Eliot's. The title is Adam Bede. The novel in the later Victorian period took a new trend, and the novel written during this period may be called modern novels because George Eliot itself was the first to write novel in the modern style. George Eliot makes Adam Bede uh, in George Eliot novel took its modern form. Every story derives its unity from its plot. The different episodes are all related to one another and subordinate to the main story. All the novels of George Eliot are example of psychological realism. So this is the cover about Adam Bede from George Eliot. Well, now about the conclusion or what I get uh, from this late Victorian era, or what I get a new knowledge from this era. Well, as I know, the Victorian period started rocky. Its people were taken advantage of over and over again during their expansion. They treated the native people even worse than their own people, who had already been abused beyond the reason. Eventually, when England ran out of capable working people, they started recruiting younger and younger workers who could not defend themselves against unfair treatment. People no longer relied on moral ideas like the Bible and then to tell them how to live. Instead, they removed themselves emotionally from anything that didn't fit this new science. Well, uh, very interesting when we're talking about late Victorian era, because in this late Victorian era we can show that the modernism is starting begin in that era, and in that era we also see how the women using a coat with a lot of layer in his cloth. Well, thank you for your attention to see my presentation today, and then I hope you get new knowledge from my presentation. And I'm sorry if I have mistaken from my presentation, but uh, hope you enjoy, and I wish you could understand what I say. Thank you so much, and goodbye.